The number one killer of women is heart disease, and I don't know that enough women know that, right? Um, when I lived in Atlanta, I they asked me to be the president of the American Heart Association in Atlanta, which is a little weird for an orthopod, but then I got to thinking about it. All of my family dies of heart disease. That's what we die of. So there's a huge role or there's a huge indication of the role of hormones in microvascular heart disease. What did the researchers have to say about that? Because I don't think everybody knows that.
No, and what was shocking and really sad is that our awareness that heart disease is our number one killer as women is actually going down. So we're taking steps backward. And
Why is that?
that's alarming. I interviewed Dr. Martha Gulati about this, who is a tremendous preventive cardiologist. And we don't necessarily know. I mean, honestly, I think I looked to the media. I sort of blamed myself after I got off the phone with her, thinking like, uh-oh, we're not writing about it as we should as journalists to really do our part to help spread the word about this. I think there's also too, just this sense that heart disease happens to older women. At 46, do I really need to be worried about heart disease now?
Well,
I mean, I
actually,
have enough information that yes, I do. But most of my peers, it's not even on their radar. What they're most afraid of is breast cancer. We've done a really good job with awareness around that, but not such a great job about awareness with heart disease.
do you think that's because, not number one, the breast cancer people have done a great job educating, but do you think it's also that at 46, for instance, even though now would be the critical time to get in front of that, it's hard to visualize yourself at 66 or 76 when it might be more relevant or more immediate, not more relevant, more immediate.
Absolutely. I mean, think back again. Here's advice for young women. It's like live your life and have fun, but remember your choices now will impact you later. I think when we're young, we think we're going to be invincible. Like I am a very fair of Irish descent, and the amount of time I spent in the sun that I wish I could take back now.
Slathered.
Oh, I would have put zinc oxide all over my body, knowing what I know now and having the health impacts that I have now from years ago sun exposure. And that's the attitude we all need to take, and I'm trying to take around my heart health now because I'm with you, Dr. Wright. Everyone in my family goes from heart disease. And so I would be a fool not to be thinking about what I can do for my heart. And in all this conversation about weight training, which I love, and I have really doubled down on my strength training routine, I make sure I get cardio in as well, because when you learn about what cardio does and the pumping of that vasculature in your heart and how it keeps it pliable. I've also started taking a statin because I do have slightly elevated cholesterol enough to make it so that a low dose statin is helpful for me. And I think before working on this book, I would have been like, no, I'm going to handle it with diet and exercise. And now I'm like, well, I've had multiple doctors now tell me, no, that's recommended for you. And so I'm listening, because I know that the heart stuff is heart. Yeah, we just don't think about it early enough.
That's right. Because the reality is, like so many things, it's largely preventable.
Yeah. And I will say too, a big eye opener in the heart health section of my book is how heart attack symptoms show up very differently in women than they do in men, which I think
Yes.
we also need to do a better job talking about, right? The symptoms are often a lot more subtle. It's not the grabbing your arm or the crushing
Falling on the
chest pain.
floor.
Not all the time, right? It can be that, but not all the time. It can be that sort of nausea or jaw pain or things that as women, we might just power through, brush aside, say, we've been taught to buck up, buttercup. And so that's what we're going to do. But when we know these symptoms, when they can be even in the back of our minds, we can say, uh-oh, and then listen to our intuition as well. A lot of cardiologists said, if it's nausea, but it's also that sneaking suspicion that something's off. These are things to listen to.
Not only to listen to, but I recently had a heart workup by Suzanne Steinbaum, who's a cardiologist in New York. and even the way a woman's heart responds to the VO2 max test, which is torture, right? Or or the way my heart rate raised at top exertion is very nuanced for women. It's very different than a man presents. So in your work, did you ever come across it's your cultural reference called Yentl Syndrome?
Oh.
Have you ever come across
I
that?
haven't I haven't heard of the Yentl syndrome. No, tell me
So
more.
it's that concept. You're it may have been this is maybe a reference that's way before you were born, but there was this movie with Barbara Streisand called Yentl. Have you ever heard of that movie? It was a
Yeah.
movie about the premise of the movie was she was a biblical scholar, but in the time she lived, only men could be a biblical scholar. So to get to do it, she had to pose as a man. And so in medicine, Yentl syndrome is this phenomenon where unless you present as a man, you don't get the same care. And for heart disease, this is where I first learned about it. These things you just described, the you're tired, you have a headache, you're fatigued, you're nauseated, didn't present like a man, so you're sent home to take a nap, right? Isn't that
Meanwhile, you're having a
fascinating?
heart
You're having a
attack.
heart attack.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It really is. Yeah. And Dr. Steinbaum, I interviewed her for the heart health section of my
Yeah.
book as well. And it's just when you know these subtle differences, when you can understand, and you don't need a medical degree as an average woman, you just need to know the basics, right? To then be able to say, oh, okay, now that I know, what questions should I ask my doctor if I want to be proactive? After working on this chapter, I started talking to my primary care physician about when is the time for me to see a preventive cardiologist given my history, and I want to get myself to New York to do that same workup that you
Yeah,
talked
I
about because it
know.
sounds world class. And I think that's the thing is like it can feel scary for a lot of people. It's like, gosh, one more thing to worry about. I'm already worried about cancer happening in younger and younger people. I'm already worried about so much, right? And sure, it's a lot to hold, but again, I think if we can have the basic information, that's when we can start to have it feel more manageable and to say, okay, well, at least I know this so that if I start to experience things, if I start to get that niggling feeling that something's wrong,
There
I'll
we
be
go.
able to
Check it
trust.
out.
Yeah, I'll trust myself. I'll trust my story and I'll get it checked out.